Session 12, January 28, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and light of the infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner. I got a call from Henry Puharich this afternoon. He will be here next month. I want to ask you if it is possible for him to join in our circle and ask questions. And also if Michael Diobrevnovic, who's known as George Hunt Williamson, happens to come here. Would it be all right for him to be in the circle? Ra. I am Ra. These entities at present are not properly attuned for their particular work due to vibrational distortions, which in turn are due to a recent lack of time-space, which you call busyness. It would be requested that the entities spend a brief time-space in each diurnal cycle of your planet in contemplation. At a future time-space in your continuum, you are requested to ask again. This group is highly balanced to this instrument's vibratory distortions due to, firstly, contact with the instrument on a day-to-day basis. Secondly, due to contact with the instrument through meditation periods. Thirdly, through a personal mind-body-spirit complex distortion towards contemplation, which in turn causes this group to be effective. Questioner. Thank you. Continuing with the previous session, you mentioned that the Orion Crusaders came here in chariots. Could you describe a chariot? Ra. I am Ra. The term chariot is a term used in warfare among your peoples. That is its significance. The shape of the Orion craft is one of the following. Firstly, the elongated, ovoid shape, which is of a darker nature than silver, but which has a metallic appearance if seen in the light. In the absence of light, it appears to be red or fiery in some nature. Other craft include disc-shaped objects of a small nature approximately 12 feet in your measurement in diameter. The box-like shape approximately 40 feet to a side in your measurement. Other craft can take on desired shape through the use of thought control mechanisms. There are various civilization complexes which work within this group. Some are more able to use intelligent infinity than others. The information is very seldom shared. Therefore, the chariots vary greatly in shape and appearance. Questioner. Is there any effort by the Confederation to stop the Orion chariots from arriving here? Ra. I am Ra. Every effort is made to quarantine this planet. However, the network of guardians, much like any other pattern of patrols on whatever level, does not hinder each and every entity from penetrating quarantine. For if request is made in love light, the law of one will be met with acquiescence. If the request is not made due to the slipping through the net, then there is penetration of this net. Questioner. Who makes this request? Ra. I am Ra. Your query is unclear. Please restate. Questioner. I didn't quite understand. How does the Confederation stop the Orion chariot from coming through the quarantine? What actions do? Ra. I am Ra. There is contact at the level of light form, or light body being, depending upon the vibratory level of the guardian. These guardians sweep reaches of your Earth's energy fields, attempting to be aware of any entities approaching. An entity which is approaching is hailed in the name of the one creator. Any entity thus hailed is bathed in love light and will of free will obey the quarantine due to the power of the law of one. Questioner. What would happen to the entity if he did not obey the quarantine after being hailed? Ra. I am Ra. To not obey quarantine after being hailed on the level of which we speak would be equivalent to your not stopping upon walking into a solid brick wall. Questioner. What would happen to the entity then if he did this? What would happen to his chariot? Ra. I am Ra. The Creator is one being. The vibratory level of those able to reach the quarantine boundaries is such that, upon seeing the love light net, it is impossible to break this law. Therefore, nothing happens. No attempt is made. There is no confrontation. The only beings who are able to penetrate the quarantine are those who discover windows or distortions in the space-time continua surrounding your planet's energy fields. Through these windows they come. These windows are rare and unpredictable. Questioner. Does this account for what we call the UFO flaps, where a large number of UFOs show up, like in 1973? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Well then, are most of the UFOs which are seen in our skies from the Orion group? Ra. I am Ra. Many of those seen in your skies are of the Orion group. They send out messages. Some are received by those who are oriented towards service to others. These messages then are altered to be acceptable to those entities while warning of difficulties ahead. This is the most that self-serving entities can do when faced with those whose wish is to serve others. The contacts which the Orion group finds most helpful to their cause are those contacts made with entities whose orientation is towards service to self. There are many thought-form entities in your sky which are of a positive nature and are the projections of the Confederation. Other sightings are due to the inadvertent visualization by your people's optical mechanisms of your own government's weaponry. Questioner: which group was it that contacted Henry Puharich in Israel right around 1972? Ra: I am Ra. We must refrain from answering this query due to the probability that the one you call Henry will read this answer. This would cause distortion in his future. It is necessary that each being use free and complete discernment from within the all-self, which is at the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Questioner: does that also apply to answering who was contacting the group that I originally was in 1962? Ra: I am Ra. This query may be answered. The group contacted was the Confederation. Questioner: did they have any of their craft in our area at that time? Ra: I am Ra. There was no craft. There was a thought form. Questioner: you mentioned the Orion Crusaders. When they do get through the net, give both technical and non-technical information. We know what you mean by technical information, but what type of non-technical information do they give to those they contact? Am I right in assuming that this is done by telepathic communication? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Through telepathy, the philosophy of the law of one with distortion of service to self is promulgated. In advanced groups, there are rituals and exercises given, and these have been written down just as the service to others oriented entities have written down the promulgated philosophy of their teachers. The philosophy concerns the service of manipulating others that they may experience service towards the other self, thus through this experiment becoming able to appreciate service to self. These entities thus would become oriented towards service to self and in turn manipulate yet others so that they, in turn, might experience the service towards the other self. Questioner: would this be the origin of what we call black magic? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct in one sense, incorrect in another. The Orion group has aided the so-called negatively oriented among your mind-body-spirit complexes. These same entities would be concerning themselves with service to self in any case, and there are many upon your so-called inner planes which are negatively oriented and thus available as inner teachers or guides and so-called possessors of certain souls who seek this distortion of service to self. Questioner: is it possible for an entity here on Earth to be so confused as to call both the Confederation and the Orion group in an alternating way, one then the other, inaudible, back to inaudible? Ra: I am Ra. It is entirely possible for the untuned channel, as you call that service, to receive both positive and negative communications. If the entity at the base of its confusion is oriented towards service to others, the entity will begin to receive messages of doom. If the entity at the base of the complex of beingness is oriented towards service to self, the Crusaders, who in this case do not find it necessary to lie, will simply begin to give the philosophy they are here to give. Many of your so-called contacts among your people have been confused and self-destructive because the channels were oriented towards service to others, but in the desire for proof were open to the lying information of the Crusaders, who then were able to neutralize the effectiveness of the channel. Questioner: are most of these Crusaders fourth density? Ra: I am Ra. There is a majority of fourth density. That is correct. Questioner: does an individual in the fourth density normally appear, or are they normally invisible to us? Ra: I am Ra. The use of the word normal is one which befuddles the meaning of the question. Let us rephrase for clarity. The fourth density is, by choice, not visible to third density. It is possible for fourth density to be visible. However, it is not the choice of the fourth density to be visible due to the necessity for concentration upon a rather difficult vibrational complex, which is the third density you experience. Questioner: are there any Confederation or Orion individuals living on Earth visible to us and important in our society at this time, walking among us? Ra: I am Ra. There are no entities of either group walking among you at this time. However, the Crusaders of Orion use two types of entities to do their bidding, shall we say. The first type is the thought form, the second, a kind of robot. Questioner: could you describe the robot? Ra: I am Ra. The robot may look like any other being. It is a construct. Questioner: is the robot which is normally called Men in Black? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect. Questioner: who are the Men in Black? Ra: I am Ra. The Men in Black are a thought form type of entity which have some beingness to their makeup. They have certain physical characteristics given them. However, their true vibrational nature is without third density vibrational characteristics, and therefore they are able to materialize and dematerialize when necessary. Questioner: are all of these Men in Black then used by the Orion Crusaders? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: if one were to visit me and I grabbed him and locked him in a closet, could I keep him or would he disappear? Ra: I am Ra. It depends upon which type of entity you grab. You are perhaps able to perceive a construct. The construct might be kept for a brief period, although these constructs also have an ability to disappear. The programming on these constructs, however, makes it more difficult to remotely control them. You would not be able to grapple with the thought form entity of the Men in Black, as you call it, type. Questioner: would this be against the law of one, and I would be making a mistake by grabbing these entities? Ra: I am Ra. There are no mistakes under the law of one. Questioner: what I'm saying is, would I be polarizing more towards self-service or towards service for others when I did this act of locking up the thought form or construct? Ra: I am Ra. You may consider that question for yourself. We interpret the law of one, but not to the extent of advice. Questioner: thank you. Well, you spoke of wanderers. Who are wanderers? Where do they come from? Ra: I am Ra. Imagine, if you will, the sand of your shores. As countless as the grains of sand are the sources of intelligent infinity. When a social memory complex has achieved its complete understanding of its desire, it may conclude that its desire is service to others with a distortion towards reaching their hand figuratively to any entities who call for aid. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move towards this sailing, move towards this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. Questioner: how many of them are incarnate on earth now? Ra: I am Ra. The number is approximate due to a heavy influx of those birthed at this time due to intensive need to lighten the planetary vibration and thus aid in harvest. The number approaches 65 million. Questioner: are most of those from the fourth density? What density do they come from? Ra: I am Ra. Few there are of fourth density. The largest number of wanderers, as you call them, are of the sixth density. The desire to serve must be distorted towards a great deal of purity of mind and what you call foolhardiness or bravery, depending on your distortion complex judgment. The challenge danger of the wanderer is that it will forget its mission, become karmically involved, and thus be swept into the maelstrom which it had incarnated to aid the destruction. Questioner: what could one of these entities do to become karmically involved? Could you give us an example? Ra: I am Ra. An entity which acts in a consciously unloving manner in action with other beings can become karmically involved. Questioner: I just had a thought. Do any of these wanderers have physical ailments in this earth situation? Ra: I am Ra. Due to the extreme variance between the vibratory distortions of third density and those of the more dense densities, if you will, wanderers have, as a general rule, some form of handicap, difficulty, or feeling of alienation, which is severe. The most common of these difficulties are alienation, the reaction against the planetary vibration by personality disorders, as you would call them, and body complex ailments indicating difficulty in adjustment to the planetary vibrations, such as allergies, as you would call them. Questioner: is there a best way for these entities to heal themselves of their physical ailments? Ra: I am Ra. This will be the last complete question of this time space. The self-healing distortion is effected through realization of the intelligent infinity resting within. This is blocked in some way in those who are not perfectly balanced in bodily complexes. The blockage varies from entity to entity. It requires the conscious awareness of the spiritual nature of reality, if you will, and the corresponding pourings of this reality into individual mind-body-spirit complex for healing to take place. We will use this instrument as example. The portions of its ailment, as you call this distortion complex, that can be perfected in balance are due primarily to a blockage of the indigo ray or pineal energy center. This center receives the intelligent infinity from all sources lawful within the one creation. That is, lawful in this third density distortion or illusion. If there is no blockage, these energies pour or stream down into the mind-body-spirit complex, perfecting, moment by moment, the individual's body complex. This instrument also experiences some distortion of the green ray energy, which you may call the heart center. It is overly open due to an intense desire distortion on the part of this mind-body-spirit complex towards service to others, or as you may call it, universal love. This entity, therefore, spends itself without regard to its reserves of mind-body-spirit complex distortion in regard to what you call strength or energy. This distortion is primarily due to the blockage of the indigo ray, as we have said before. The misapprehension distortion of the instrument responsible for this blockage is the basic orientation towards a belief in unworthiness. The unworthiness distortion blocks the free flow of intelligent infinity. The seventh or violet ray is unimpaired. Thus, this being not only an energy receptor, but a sum total of the vibratory level of the individual. The other energies are also quite clear. The solution to healing in this case is action that puts into practice the peaceful understanding in humility distortion that the entity is one with the Creator, therefore perfected and not separate. In each of what you would call ill health, one or more of these energy centers is blocked. The intelligence of the mind-body-spirit complex needs then to be alerted either by the self as healer or by the catalyst of another healer, as we have said before. Is there a short question before we close this session? Questioner: is it possible for you to tell us if any of the three of us are and have been wanderers? Ra: I am Ra. In scanning each of the mind-body-spirit complexes present, we find an already complete assurance of this occurrence, and thus find no harm in recapitulating this occurrence. Each of those present are wanderers pursuing a mission, if you will. Questioner: thank you. Is there anything we can do to make this instrument more comfortable? Ra: we ask you to realign the object upon which the symbols sit. It is not a significant distortion for one session only, but you would find upon measuring the entire assemblage that the resting place is 1.4 degrees from the correct alignment. The resting place an additional 1/2 degree away from proper orientation. Do not concern yourselves overly with this in the time-space nexus present, but do not allow these distortions to remain over a long period, or the contact will be gradually impaired. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai.